So today we're here on the Pillars, and we have a very special guest with us. Our command chief, Chief Blazier, is here. Now, he's known sometimes, at least around, as Superman because he walks in kind of an area and kind of takes over. He has a history in intel. He also has some great connections with the 17th Training Wing Command Chief, which just was thrown on AFN. We may hit that. But what we want to do is demystify him today and bring him down to kind of not just what he sees for his vision for the wing, but who he is as a person and how he organizes his day for to be most effective. So, Chief, thanks for being with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir.
So I want to start with an easy question. What did you have for breakfast today?
What did I have for breakfast today? So I had a blend today. So had a vanilla, banana, protein shake. So yeah. Pretty fantastic.
Okay, so a blend. What do you put in it? So you said protein, banana. What else goes in
a little bit of multivitamin with coconut milk.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty easy stuff.
And why do you choose that?
Just because it's quick and easy.
Quick and easy.
Yeah, it just rolls right in straight. So I start my day by going to my garage, working out. Then I roll right into making breakfast. Could be a couple eggs. Could be maybe I'll throw something in the blender. And then I'll sit down and start maybe working on strengthening something I'm focusing on, trying to get better on. It could be on the spiritual side, could be on a leadership perspective. I'll try to take something in for the next 30 minutes or so.
So I know your garage is like a CrossFit studio.
Mm-hmm.
So what does your workout generally look like?
Well, I mean, it's always different a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll usually in the morning I'll try to focus more on cardio or
Mm-hmm.
some flexibility stuff.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon is where I'll try to hit more of a heavy strength kind of workout.
Okay. And why we bring this up oftentimes is folks who work out in the morning generally are associated with upper levels of leadership. It's kind of a correlation that occurs. So some people have done that to start kind of their leadership training, but it starts their day effectively. So for those at home, just consider that in your fitness regimen, that if you are going to add fitness in your day, sometimes doing it in the morning gives you a jump start on your day.
Okay. Yeah, and I'd like to just add to that, right? So, I mean, this is the thing where I've been battling this routine my whole life. So it's not where, I mean, I still try to fight the snooze button, right? I still try to fight where that to me I got that first 5-second decision, that period is where I've noticed it's crucial, right? Because I can control that. And another thing too is, especially when I was a tech school instructor, I had the best intentions of I'll work out in the morning, and then it came out to where. Now I'll just get a little bit more sleep, and then I'd bring my gym bag to work with me, and I'll say, I'll do lunch, but then I just end up working through lunch, doing the thing that came to me, and I put those personal priorities, I put them off all the time. So I got up to about 240 pounds.
Oh, wow.
At one point in my life, and I was still a good enough athlete that I could pass the PT test, but my overall health wasn't good, and I realized you got to make a difference between life priorities and daily priorities. And, those things in terms of your family, your health, and, health beyond just doing push-ups and going for a run. You got to make sure that you pay that bill, or if not, I mean, you will go bankrupt as a person. So I continue to try to pay attention to that. I continue to try to work the routine. I try to refine it. Chief Wright and I had a conversation when he was visiting Langley here several months ago, and I really kind of dove in on that, and his morning routine is very ritualistic. And I don't know if you guys talked about that, during the Pillars broadcast, but yeah, I took that as that discipline and consistent approach is really, I think, something that you have to focus in on.
Do you feel like it sets up your day?
Oh,
success?
undoubtedly, yeah, undoubtedly.
Okay.
Because it just clears your mind. And especially allows you, the thing that we spoke about too is, once I get done with all that, I try to really focus on what is it that I need to focus on today. Does my family have some key things going on to make sure I have time and energy so that I can transition from being an airman to being a parent or being a spouse. But I definitely, without a doubt, it makes the day so much more fulfilled to where you can get a lot more done in 8 hours than you could if you just stayed there to the wee hours of the night, which I've done that before.
Yeah. What was the pivotal point? So you put on this weight, you're being effective at your job, obviously, there still, and they're probably lauding you for all the efforts you're putting forward. You're knocking out the tasks, working through lunch, doing stuff, working late hours. Do you remember, was there a moment that came up where you said, I need to reevaluate my life priorities over the day-to-day?
Well, so I went to Korea. So it was always the deployment I would get back in shape, or whenever time wasn't co-located with my family, I'd usually get back in shape. I would just say it was when I got into, and this isn't like a plug for CrossFit, but when I got into something that was a little bit more competitive for me, like me versus me, I think that's when I started to realize is I got to get out of this cycle of, gaining weight, getting in shape, gaining weight, getting in shape. And then particularly when I had my first knee injury. So I've had 3 surgeries now. I was pretty competitive in sports. So I've had both knees worked on now, my shoulder. And I just realized that it's a powerful question. I don't think about it too much as far as the moment that triggered that, but definitely the surgeries. And I guess I would say too, it's about 3 years ago, this October it'll be 3 years, my grandma passed away. And my grandfather, so my grandparents raised me. About 4 months later, he passed away. He couldn't live without her, right? It was one of those classic cases. But I just started to look at life differently. And I started to look at life as, I won't always have the opportunity to get back. I won't always have the opportunity to, and then will I be strong enough in that moment that I'm needed, whether it's for my family, for the Air Force. So I try to be a little bit more disciplined and doing things that are positive for me on a daily basis, so I don't have to get in a point where I can't recover down the line.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. So we know that you were new to our wing just this last year. So what were your thoughts when you were notified that this was going to be your next assignment?
I think with any new opportunity, right, first thing you say is, hey, am I ready for this? Same thing in our creed, right? I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail in any situation. I don't want to, and I take that pretty seriously. But then you think you have to look at it and say, hey, well, you got to get out of that mindset and just get after it. Whatever that is, that there's an area you don't know, you're not familiar with, you have to just get to work. You have to connect with people, and that was really what I was most excited about. We have such diverse missions in our wing, airmen that do incredible things, and they don't even know it. They don't even know what they do and the power that it brings to our service and to our nation. So really it was kind of a quick shift to hey, the excitement to get out there and meet our airmen, their families, and try to do something with the opportunity we have.
Did you know that there was going to be this much traveling involved?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, Colonel Rice was up front with me, and he actually, this kind of shows that the person he is. He called my wife and let her know and say, hey, are you good with it? Before I was hired, before I even knew what the decision was, he made sure to reach out to my family and say, hey, here's kind of what the job would entail. We spend probably, 250 days on the road a year. But yeah, it was one of those things, you take it on as a family, and expectations are key. There's hard moments, undoubtedly, but in my past jobs, I've been on the road quite a bit, but this has undoubtedly, I think, been the best, where we've been able to keep things kind of still connected as a family through the demands.
What's some advice? So we have a deploying wing. We have some airmen that are going on 1 to nearly 1 deployments. So they're trying to stay connected while they're going down range or they're TDY for long periods. What have you found effective for connecting with your family while you're on the road that much?
Yeah, I think it's certainly harder for those who have longer periods of time away. But for those that I think that you're given maybe shorter windows of time, is it a thing where we talk about balance a lot? A word that you're hearing more frequently is harmony. But what I try to focus on is the time you are given, right? The time you do have that is yours at home, or the time that you are on the phone and you get that phone call. Make sure you're really, really present. Make sure that you're not just halfway there. Make sure your phone's not in your hand. Make sure you're prepared for that interaction. Make sure you're clear on what role are you in. Are you having to offload something and you need them to listen, or they need to do that for you?
Yeah.
Those are things I think my wife and I, we just celebrated 20 years of marriage, and
Congratulations.
And,
That's awesome.
We didn't always understand kind of that dynamic. There's a lot of times I just needed to shut up and listen. And she's like, and when she literally tells me now, hey, I just need you to listen. So I'm not trying to fix everything within the first 5 seconds of what she's saying. So I think creating just moments. We have digital apps now and devices. My son and I, we used to I've got 2 Xboxes, 2 PlayStations when I was in Korea, and we would game together, just creating those moments to stay connected. I know still some people, they write letters. Some look at that as old fashioned. I think that's still a great way to communicate in a different way than just quick emojis and texts. But sometimes the emojis and texts are a blast and fun too. So I think you have to find what is it that creates meaningful connection, even though you're kind of away from each other. You won't get the volume of time maybe that you want, but when you do have that time, to make sure it's truly meaningful. And especially like when I'm home. So like this weekend, just got back from the Air Force Association conference, and that's like the Super Bowl of the Air Force. But we're going paintballing this weekend.
That's awesome.
It's one of those things where we're going to put down any device and we're just going to get out there and get after it. And my kids are already plotting strategy and talking mess. So it's one of those things. I mean, we'll look back on for months from now and probably laugh about it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's such a strong message too, because I know we're specifically talking about relationships, like your spouse, but even with single airmen, they have those support networks back home that they can still reach out to, Xbox Live or whatever gaming system they use, where they can still connect and really have that support around them.
Yeah, my son's big on that too. He's a big Fortnite player, and I was like, oh, come on, but we PCS this last year. We were at our last base for 5 years, so he had to walk away from 5 years of relationships and friends, and that was hard for him.
Yeah.
But that was a forum that he still was able to stay with that same network of friends.
Yeah.
It is funny too. You still have to parent sometimes online when they're physical friends. They still have arguments, just like we did as kids playing in the neighborhood, especially when they know each other.
It's pretty comical.
It's funny because you hear the one side of the argument over the mic. I just enjoy it. That's the great thing of having kids.
It is a blast.
So for general resilience, right? So we all have challenges throughout our lives. If you had to make a recommendation for just general, like a way to bounce back from difficult things, what advice would you give an airman listening now?
So, this is something we think about a lot. This is something where there's so much going on in our world right now, and I think, the term we talk about resilience, is it because the volume of what we have going on? Is it we have access to so much information and things we feel we have to do? I think it's the advice I would say is, when something shows up on your doorstep, I think you have to, number one, realize, what do I control? What are the aspects of this that are within my control that I can do something about? And then if there's still a point to where that's not enough to get me through the situation, then I very quickly need to look at it and say, okay, who do I need to help me cover that extra gap, right? And don't wait for that. Don't look yourself in the mirror and say, oh, no, I'll just continue. I'm strong enough. I can. The actual sign of strength is asking for help. And I think sometimes we wait too long. We let our pride get in the way. We think that, hey, I can control this. You don't control the circumstance, but you control your choices, and that's why I think it's that line between you gotta shift. Because the world has changed around you, and sometimes you gotta change your approach, your technique, and ultimately it should be that, hey, is this working for me? You could have every supervisor, every airman in the world offer you everything, but you're the only one that knows what to pick off the menu, and you're the only one who knows whether that tasted good, whether that sat well with you overnight, and I think you have to be responsible for that piece of it, so that you can get through the challenge. That's what I would say.
Some good advice. So to get to know you a little more personable, what is an unusual habit or an absurd thing that you love?
I don't know if you guys have seen Hot Rod. That's one of my kids' favorite movies. Have you seen it at all? So I would say, hi, my name's Blaze, and I like to party. Right. So I like to dance and have a good time. I kind of like to mix it up a little bit. We just got back from a cruise. It was for our anniversary and for my wife's birthday, and so the second day we were sitting on the deck and they were having a lip sync battle audition, and my wife was like, hey, you should go try out. So yeah, I ended up representing the guys. It was guys versus girls from the trip. And then they came to me and they was like, yeah, you got like 4 or 5 more things you need to go and do, which I didn't realize all that. So there might be a picture of me floating around. But I ended up being the champion of the cruise for the lip sync battle.
That is awesome.
Excellence in all we do, right? We try to, and to include having fun. I think in the topic of resilience, one thing I think we overlook is how important fun is.
Yeah.
We tend to take that topic on as something that is, we talk about the ugly side, the challenge, the whatever it is that made things hard. But I think just in the terms when we talk about balance, we still need laughter is very powerful. To be able to have fun is very, very powerful. And this is a thing where I'm not that good at having fun. The other day I was on a panel and somebody asked me, what are the things you suck at? And I've been a workaholic many, many years of my life. And in terms of every time I look back and the healthier periods, the times where I felt the best, it was where I made sure I did something to just have fun, to play. You know what I mean? So.
And it doesn't take much, right, in that case. And anywhere we go, you can have fun. I ended up on Instagram with my wife last week on vacation. We were in this,
like your own account or someone else's account?
No, on someone else's, and my
Okay.
wife videotaped it too. So we ended up in a restaurant, with all these old people where we are, and I mean elderly folks. And You Lost That Love and Feeling came on.
Oh,
I happened to have Ray-Bans. I didn't have a mic.
You had
but
like a Top Gun moment?
I did. I actually grabbed a
this
pickle
is-
because I didn't have a mic and started singing into the pickle in front of the table
As soon
in
as
the
we're
restaurant.
done here, I want to see
Yeah,
it.
being cheered
Seeing
by
is believing.
being cheered on. Luckily, she was totally red. Those kind of moments of fun are totally ridiculous. I get it, but it's just a way to kick back because most of us are focused, so mission focused, and we go home and we take that mission focus to our home, and we're like, well, this needs to be done, this needs to be done, and we don't realize we need to make those transitions you talked about from being the worker, being the excellent airman to being the excellent spouse, friend, father, mother, at home. And that's still part of excellence. But service for self is our work, but it's also service to our family, right, and our friends and our neighbors is part of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I don't know if everybody's seen it, but the chief of staff has a letter out, in terms of what are the 4 components of healthy squadrons, and it's mission, culture, family, and fun. And there's where's the AFI on fun? What is it the thing that tells us how to have fun?
Yep.
I mean, there's plenty of things that are the other mission. I mean, we certainly understand that side, but those other components. What does it mean? When we talk about family, what are we talking about? Are we talking about are we talking about both sides of our name tapes? Are we talking about our Air Force family, our family at home, the family that waved goodbye to us before we went to BMT? Do we stay connected with them? How much energy and effort do we put into that? Because I think it's just natural that the things we associate with the mission are the things we tend to do because they're probably the things we're good at. The other things, because maybe we haven't done them, maybe we get less reps in too. But what I've seen is those other components. I mean, culture, family, and fun. Every unit I've ever been into, and I've seen a lot of Air Force units that does those things well, the mission is off the charts.
Yep.
Right?
Because you enjoy coming to work.
Yep.
Exactly. Work is play, right? So and you can get real, connected, honest conversations, regardless of rank or anything like that. So, and I think it just further enhances the mission. We take opportunities. The Air Force is my family, and it is. After spending 2 decades of my life and the relationships and the people I've met, I'm just so thankful for it. But I realize, what is it today our airmen are experiencing in this wing? What is it today that our airmen are experiencing in other areas of the Air Force? Right? We don't want it to wear to what we say are bumper stickers or the things that they've been sold but yet haven't yet seen. And but I think it's such a great time to be in. It really, really is. I've never seen such commitment to us doing the things that matter most, and I think we just still need to commit to that. Because those other areas, like I said, we haven't been good at that for the time I've been in. We weren't good at those other things at all. So,
well, maybe a couple more questions, one more,
Yeah.
and then we'll close.
Well, basically, I wanted to reiterate, you hear it right here from your command chief. You're allowed to have fun. You're allowed to laugh. And please bring that into the work section and apply it with your coworkers, and then take it home with you and apply it in your families. You are given permission, and you can add it to your checklist or a TO, whatever you operate by. So one of our favorite questions that we like to ask also is, if you had a giant billboard that you could put any message you wanted for the world, for millions and billions of people to see, what would your billboard say?
If you want to change the world, start by making a difference to the person who's right next to you. That's what I would say.
That's good.
Yeah.
And what does that mean for you when you say it like that?
So I think the most powerful thing you can ever do is make a difference for somebody else, right? Is to help someone else. And, I think sometimes, even for me, like we talk about when things get hard, a lot of things that I'll do when things are heavy for me is one thing I've learned is when I can go, it's that helper's high of doing something for somebody else that will help me, right? And I think, sometimes we just get overwhelmed with the size of a problem, and what that does is it causes us to be a little bit frozen, a little bit stagnant. But if you look at how many airmen we have in our Air Force, or you look at just the number of places we're at, and if every one of them decided to just do something that was positive for their wingman that's right next to them, it would create a connection. It would create the trust. It would create say, hey, this is somebody that will be there for me. And a lot of times you just don't know. I had a commander one time. He specifically would ask an airman how they're doing 3 times. Because the first time is you're going to get the regular generic answer, oh, I'm good. The second time it's, oh, wait, you actually care and you want to know. And the third time is when they realize, like, oh, like we actually, you care and I can be, open with you. Or at least it'll provide the opportunity for it. So I'd ask is, every airman is a sensor within our organization to do something when somebody needs it, and you really don't know when they need it. Even for me, I have airmen who I recently talked about at ALS graduation. Sergeant Christian in the Intelligence Support Squadron, right? And I recently had one of my knee surgeries, and he stopped me and said, "Hey, Chief, how are you doing? Right? How are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, I actually have a PT test coming up, and it'll be my first one since the surgery, and yeah, I'm a little anxious." It's important to me to model health. If I'm talking about it and say that we need to be professional athletes as airmen, then, I want to make sure I model that. And he's like, well, hey, you want me to go out and pace you? Can I run with you? We're talking about a staff sergeant here, right? And I was like, yeah, I'd love that. And we went out and I ran a pretty decent time. But I mean, that takes a lot, I think, for a young staff sergeant. But he didn't look at me as a command chief. He just looked at me as a fellow airman. And hey, can I help you? So I think, to me, if you want to change the world, you've heard Admiral Craven's book probably, when I start by making your bed. But I would take that to the next level too, right? Yeah, do something that's positive, but also do something that's positive for a person, because I think it'll encourage them to do the same thing, and then it really starts becoming powerful.
And with that individual specifically, his gift is running. Like he runs long distances very fast. I've been out with him. He's very, very fast, and so he's offering the gift he has in his workplace, right? So so for every person, I believe, is gifted in a different way, too. So if you have a specific gift listening to this podcast, and perhaps it's speaking or writing better or test preparation, whatever it may be, offer that gift up, because the person next to you probably needs that gift, and they have a gift that you probably need too, and that's how we grow community.
Absolutely.
So final question.
Well, that's the strength in our diversity that we talk about all the time,
yes.
right? I mean, you're absolutely right.
And that's what builds culture and makes us have fun, because it makes everything easier when you can rely on your airmen and you test it here in the safe waters, so that when you're downrange, you can really trust the people around you. So final question, if it's okay, Chief.
It's definitely okay, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just checking. We're so happy you're here, too, by the way. One question is about books. So a lot of folks listening to this podcast want to know where to start, because maybe they're listening and I want to eventually be a chief. I eventually want to move into executive leadership, but I don't really know where to go. And books tend to be a pretty good resource for folks. So if you had to recommend a book for someone to start with, a book or books, your call, what would you recommend to folks?
The book I loved early on was 360 Degree Leader by John Maxwell. So I was not an avid reader when I was younger. Even now, I think I could still read more. But I definitely think it holds merit. leaders or readers and vice versa. But 360 Degree Leader by John Maxwell talks about how you actually leadership is more than just I'm on top of the organization and everybody does what I say, because there's so many myths with that, and it really it puts a call out there. And how do I connect and influence, because that's really the call of leadership, is how do I influence those around me. And I would say, Colonel Rice and I are influenced all the time by the airmen will raise their hand and say, hey, here's what the world looks like to me. I hear what you're saying, but here's what I see. And that's leadership as well. I think there's other books out there that I think The One Thing is one that I really, really enjoyed reading, because it talks about how you can only do one thing at one time. You really can. I mean, there's everything else beyond that is nonsense. So when you talk about we talk about priorities, we don't do that very well. I enjoyed that. Extreme Ownership. If you haven't seen, that's another big favorite of mine. Is you got to own it. And I ask every airman to what do you own? Are you complaining about things more than you're taking action on things the same things that piss you off? So I think that's Jocko Willink.
Everyone needs some Jocko.
Everybody needs start your day with Jocko, right? So it's he's definitely intense. That's another favorite of mine. The Power of Moments is such a fantastic book. And that was recommended to me by Chief Toberman, who's he's going to be the new AF Space Command Chief. So we'll see if he's actually the Chief Master Sergeant of the Space Corps. Or we can joke about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
He's out of this world. I just saw him last week. So
he's. And I was lucky enough to have him as my command chief when I made chief, and he mentored and coached me on many occasions. But he recommended that book to me, and it talks about the moments we have in our life and our opportunity to either learn from them, to emphasize them. Even one thing, what it brings on, I think it's John Deere, is how they bring on employees into their organization. I think about our sponsorship programs. Colonel Rice and I when we show up somewhere, and they'll have our airman lights, or they'll have this stuff out for us. But how do we welcome our airmen and families? That immediately is what I thought about. Sometimes I've been sponsored before, and you get the leftover desk at work. You get these other things, and I'll be talking about that with my superintendents. But that's a powerful moment, right? That first day at work, that first day on the installation, that first phone call from whoever it is you're going to, is really, really important. But do we take advantage of that? Do we take it that seriously as we should? So that's what I took from that book. But it's just an example of many, many things that's in there. So those are just a few.
Well, thank you for that. Thanks for the recommendation. Those are awesome books, too. So we want to thank you for listening to the Pillars, the podcast of the 363rd ISR Wing of the United States Air Force. I'm Chaplain Jim Bridgham.
I'm Sergeant Eckerberg.
And I'm Chief Blazier.
Until next time, if you need us, reach out to us in the global address list, and we just want to thank you for what you do for our nation. Have a great day.